Hey there, lovely people. It's Tal here, and welcome to the Gamers Rest. And in this episode of Tal Talks, a series where I get to talk to people in the TTRPG industry, I am lucky enough to be joined by the Michelangelo of the miniature painting world. I'm sorry. Me and the Goblin King are very, very good friends, and so
Yes.
it wouldn't be the same if I didn't tease him just a tiny bit. But yes, today I'm joined by miniature painter, D&D'er, and general all-round amazing person. It's the Goblin King. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to have a chat with me today.
No problem. The money's in the post.
Thanks very much. So for those of you who don't know, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell people where they can find you and
Well,
support you?
yes. Well, I got a YouTube channel called Michael Mordor, and if anybody who knows me and knows Tal, you probably already know who I am anyway. But if you do like miniature painting, that's to do with Reaper miniatures, WizKids games, Star Wars miniatures, in fact, all sorts of different companies. A little bit of Games Workshop, but not too much because I think they're money grabbing little bastards. But but yes, if you do like miniature painting and you like old school type of miniature painting and you want a down to earth show, then that's what I do. I'm just a normal guy doing the normal thing and nothing extravagant, just 100% me, and that's it. That's what you get. That's what you get.
Absolutely. So I guess my first question is, how did it all start for you? Because you do commissions and you obviously do the YouTube channel as well. So how did it all get started?
Oh, right. What do you say? What you're after the life story?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, let's go back to the 70s then. It's like, oh my God, we only got an hour, Mike. Well, back in the 70s, I was born in 71, and in 76, my parents started buying me the old Airfix model kits and stuff. So that's where I first started doing model making and started painting. I was, remember now, as a real young little kid, my painting was absolutely awful. The wings were probably stuck on back to front. You know what it's like. So yeah, that was my intro into model making, and back in the 70s, it was all your Airfix model kits, your Lancaster bombers, your Spitfires. It's all Second World War models back in the 70s, and a little bit of Vietnam was coming in to it, but not a lot because it was still a bit a sore subject to do.
Yeah.
But what got me into fantasy miniature painting was in the 80s, and again that was my parents' fault. My parents' fault because they bought me my first RPG game, which was a tabletop game, and it was the Warlock of Firetop Mountain by Peter Jackson. I think it was Peter Jackson, not Peter Jackson.
Steve Jackson. Yeah, Lord of the Rings. He'd love to have that as well on his resume, I'm sure.
No, it wasn't Peter Jackson. It's Steve Jackson. Is it Steve Jackson?
Yeah.
Steve Jackson. That's the guy, Peter Jackson. Oh, that's the Lord of the Rings coming out there. But no, Steve Jackson, and it was for Games Workshop. It was an actual Games Workshop game. And what it was my first little RPG game, and it came with all your stat sets for your miniatures, and it came with like 4 or 5 miniatures. I can't quite remember now, but 4 or 5 miniatures, and they were little plastic miniatures. And of course, they were my first miniatures I painted up that were fantasy. So it was my first little party of, as I call it, your D&D miniatures, whatever you want to call them. But it's really an RPG game. And that's what got me into it. And of course, another huge influence for me back in the 80s was in 86 Labyrinth came out. And of course, David Bowie is the Goblin King. And I started collecting all the goblins and everything from Games Workshop and stuff, and my dad used to call me the Goblin King and all this stuff, and that's how my name got to start as the Goblin King, because my parents used to wind me up calling me the Goblin King, and and that's how that name got to, that nickname came about. And of course, David Bowie will always be the Goblin King, and I wasn't trying to take away his absolute awesomeness. But it's just stuck with me, and that's what's happened over the years. But how I got into painting, Mike,
Okay, that's fine. It's fine. You carry on.
Anyways, but how I got into painting, because what happened when I left school, I did a few different jobs, but then I got into catering, and my first love in work is cooking. So I've been a head chef. I've worked in 5 star hotels, 4 star hotels. I've worked all around Europe in the hotels, and I had an absolutely wonderful life working in all the kitchens, you know. But what happened was I started getting anxiety attacks in the kitchen. When I was absolutely perfect doing the actual cooking, but when it came to service, you know, you got an hour service, and I'd have 100 chits on all the different meals to make, and I couldn't cope with this situation.
Very stressful.
And it was strange because I was doing it for years, and then I just went crazy, and I just couldn't cope with it. So I started seeing a doctor, and the doctor said to me, "Look, you need to change your career."
Oh,
I
wow.
was like, "Why?" And so it was a case of I couldn't do the catering anymore, so I had to change my career. Now, over the years, living in the hotels as a chef, it's split shifts.
Yeah.
So what I was doing in my split shifts is I was painting miniatures. So all those years I was actually chefing. I was also doing my miniature painting as a hobby and to unwind. So in between services, I'd be doing my miniature painting. So I always had that as a hobby. So I built up my painting skills that way. And of course, then what happened was I started a Patreon doing my miniature painting. And what was it 2014? I started my business, or 2013, 2014, I think it was, and I'm still going now. And of course, yeah, that's my life story. Yeah, we can go now. There you go. And I said all that without breathing. That was really
Did really
cool.
well, yeah. So that, I mean, that's quite a, you know, for a doctor to kind of turn around and say, look, you've got to completely change
It was a
what
nightmare.
you're
It
doing.
was.
Yeah.
Al, honestly, I was heartbroken, and I still am heartbroken because you know I love my cooking.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, cooking was an absolute joy for me. But of course, even if I could go back, because I haven't had an anxiety attack for years now,
Hmm.
so that's kind of under control. But what's happened, of course, as I've got older, I've got IBS now.
Hmm.
So I couldn't go back into the kitchen even if I wanted to, because I can't taste all the foods because I'm gluten free.
Yeah, of course.
So as a chef, you need to be able to try all the food. So I
Yeah.
can't actually ever go back to it. And of course, my hobby as a miniature painter became my full time job.
Hmm.
So that's what I've been up to, and it's been great. And of course, I've met all these people doing the Road 20, and I met you through my
Yeah,
miniature
yeah.
painting. I mean, I met all my people like Renegade Shag and Rod and everybody else, and Michelle and Shazus, you know, Night vs. Dragon, all these people, you know, that we love are all through the job I got by miniature painting. And I met all these lovely people over the years, and it's been fantastic. And of course, my partner Claire Scorpler.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for my partner Claire, because we was together when I was a chef. I
Hmm.
mean, that's how we met. So she was an actual waitress, and I gotta be careful what I say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So anyway, so we got together,
Hmm.
and of course, then what happened? As I found out that the doctor saying about changing my career. And she gave me, Claire kind of supported me for nearly 2 years while I built up my business.
Hmm.
So in those 2 years, I was not earning any money. I was not on the dole because I detest all that going on the dole stuff.
Hmm.
I've always been a worker, so that to me was embarrassing to actually want to do that. I really needed to help support Claire.
Yeah.
So what happened was she gave me this time by paying the mortgage for those nearly 2 years. And while those 2 years, I built up my business on like Twitter and everything like that, and built up my, as I call it, the clientele.
Yeah.
And then I was able. It got to a stage where I was able to take over paying the mortgage through my miniature painting. So it was a very, very hard 2 years. And I think you remember I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
posting every single day on all the social medias.
Hmm.
And I did that every single day until I got all my um, friends and customers, and it worked. And you know, now I earn a good wage. I mean, it's not brilliant now
That,
because that
yeah, things have changed.
COVID kind of messed a lot of us up with
Hmm.
the COVID crisis. but I'm still paying the mortgage, and I mean, to be able to actually pay my mortgage through a job that I love, and that is painting miniatures. I mean, I'm home with my animals.
Yep.
I mean, I couldn't ask for more. I mean, it's an absolute joy. So there's no complaints at all. And to be honest, I'd rather have less money and do what I'm doing than earn a lot of money and have a boss shouting at me every 5 minutes telling me what to do.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yes, but it is very, very hard, and I don't know if I would recommend it now to somebody like myself who wanted to get into the business because it's so difficult now.
It is.
It really
Yeah.
is
I mean,
difficult.
we were talking about this the other day, weren't we? That
Mm.
it's not just having an ability and being able to paint miniatures
Yeah.
and create these amazing things. It's when it's just you, it's also all the other stuff that goes into it. So it's the advertising, it's building up, like you said,
Hmm.
building up your customer base and all those things. It all takes time, and
Yeah.
I think sometimes people assume that it you can get overnight success.
No, it doesn't work.
That
No, it
you
doesn't work
no
that way.
that you could just turn up and do something, and suddenly you've got millions of followers, and it's all amazing. I mean, you could be an incredible
Mm.
painter, broadcaster, all of those things, but there's
Mm.
a lot of hard work that goes into building.
It took it took 5 years. It
Mm,
took 5 years to get a sponsorship with Reaper Miniatures.
yeah,
And I was so happy to get the sponsorship with Reaper Miniatures. Um, but what happened with Reaper, which is a shame, and a lot of companies did this, because I managed to get up to I had 12 sponsors at one time for different miniature companies, which was absolutely amazing. But what happened with some of the big companies was they started taking anybody on as a sponsor,
mm,
instead of what Reaper was doing when they first started as sponsors. They were doing it really based on talent,
yeah,
and and then they were sending miniatures to you to paint, and you know. But what happened then was it was a sponsorship for people with the Twitch channels and the YouTube channels, and all they wanted was to advertise their products.
yeah,
So they were taking all these different people on as sponsors, which but they hadn't been painting long. I
mm,
mean, I knew a couple of them, and it's like it just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, I love Reaper Miniatures. I think they're a fantastic company, and I'll always support their
yeah,
company. But what I'm trying to say is a lot of sponsorships now. The company doesn't need it anymore. They got in-house painters.
yeah,
So, and I think with the smaller companies, it's the same thing. And Reaper was a bit of a smaller company, especially in the UK when I first started. It wasn't really that well known. In America, it was big, always has been,
mm,
but over in the UK, so it took a lot to build up the audience through for Reaper Miniatures, and now that they're a lot bigger, they don't need that support of the small supporters,
mm,
even though they'll still retweet you and do all these different things.
yeah,
It's not as needed as much. So
mm,
you know, and that's normal though. And it's like Games Workshop. Games Workshop back in the day, you might remember yourself. You used to have White Dwarf. You had Dragon magazines.
mm,
Now White Dwarf back in the 80s from Games Workshop, that was that's like a modern magazine. I mean, you had all the different companies in there.
yep,
It had so you had all the different small companies advertising their miniatures,
yeah,
advertising their paints. But then Games Workshop got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then independently they got rid of all the stuff from White Dwarf. So then, as soon as you got into the 90s, late 90s, you didn't see nothing.
no,
It was
that's
it
it,
was all it was all Games Workshop only.
yep,
So instead of them helping the smaller companies
mm,
and being a nice little all-rounder, Games Workshop kicked everybody out, and it's all about Games Workshop. And that's why I said earlier, they got greedy. It's because that's what happens. I
yeah,
mean, at the end of the day, that's what these companies do.
mm,
And we can't stop them. That's how they make their money.
yep,
And if I was in business like Games Workshop, I'd probably do the same thing myself because that's good business. You're looking after yourself. But it is a shame how the
yeah.
industry has changed.
Definitely, no, absolutely, absolutely. I think you're right. I think there's this real sense that I don't know. Something definitely changed for a lot of people across the industry. Whether or not the industry suddenly became a bit more mainstream,
Yeah.
And there were more people kind of interested in it, and it was, I don't know, more accessible. Maybe, I don't know, but definitely the kind of moved away from the hobbyists and the people that sat within
Yeah.
the sphere, and
Yeah.
suddenly it's, I don't know whether or not it's more people with perhaps a broader appeal were suddenly like, oh yeah, we should, be using them because
Yeah.
they've got 1
Yeah.
million, YouTube followers and so on and so forth.
Yeah. It was exactly the same for me with Dungeons and Dragons. When I first started my Dungeons and Dragons, I remember I didn't start playing Dungeons and Dragons until fifth edition.
Mm.
So I mean, I got loads of friends that played it from the very beginning. But I started playing Dungeons and Dragons fifth edition, and I loved it. But in the 8 years,
Yeah,
eight
yeah,
or 9 years that I've played fifth edition, it's gone from absolutely fantastic to cringeworthy in some things. And now I'm not going to go into detail on the show about that because that's another issue
yeah,
for another time.
yeah.
But it's I just find that. Um, I love playing the Roll20, but D&D has changed so much,
Mm.
and I don't know if it's because of all the YouTube channels. I don't know. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but it just doesn't feel like the fantasy game I used to play
Yeah.
when we first started playing. Now it feels like you can't do the things you used to doing before. I don't know why. It's just doesn't appeal to me as much as it used to. I'm actually enjoying playing Star Wars Legion now.
Nice.
Back playing Star Wars Legion. I like playing the WizKid. I like playing the WizKids, the old the Dungeons and Dragons games, which are your little solo player games.
Yeah.
They got the board games. And Claire and myself, we love playing the Dungeon Saga by Mantic Games. Now, the good thing about Dungeon Saga is you can make it your own. You can add extra dice. You can expand it. And you don't have to follow the D&D rules. And
Yeah.
that's another thing that we love about playing more tabletop games by the smaller companies. You got that room to add or take
Mm.
away, and you don't feel bad about doing it, and no one cares.
I know what you mean.
so, so yeah, we're playing loads of games, but we try to find lots of games that are like two players.
Yeah.
What I do miss, and what I'd really like to do, is play games like Dungeons and Dragons at my house with all the
Mm.
with all my miniatures. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems so heartbreaking that you got all these lovely miniatures that are all over my walls in the living room,
Yes.
and I end up playing on Roll20.
Yeah. And
And
it's
this,
it's a
sorry,
great it's a great thing for bringing people together across the world because
yes,
in
it
our
is.
game we've got people from all over
Mm.
all over the place. But not having the miniature in your hand,
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
it's a different experience, isn't it?
Well, Claire's got this thing where we're not playing any games unless they're painted miniatures. We're not allowed to play board games unless if they're unpainted miniatures. But no, well, if it wasn't, it's like I said before though. If it wasn't for things like Roll20, I'd have never met you.
Yeah,
We would have never played together. I mean, I know
absolutely.
you
Yeah,
live in the UK, and maybe one day we'll actually get to visit
we
you.
will definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Um, and most of my other friends, in fact, all my other friends, they're all in the USA and
Mm.
Canada.
Yeah,
I mean, all in France, Australia. I mean, I know people all around the world. And so, even though social media for me personally is nightmarish and scary, and it's been very, very difficult few years for me backing away from social media because it got overwhelming.
mm.
Um, I also have to thank it for actually finding all these friends around the world.
Yeah,
I've made some really close friends like yourself, and it's I can't thank social media enough for that. But it's also very, very difficult, like as you know
absolutely.
yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
You know.
It's that it's a great tool, but when it's not when it's used in the wrong way, it's dangerous.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Like I said, I mean, I was on Twitter for 8 years. I left totally a year ago, and I haven't
Mm.
been back. I got a very, very small Facebook account, but that's
Yeah.
the only reason I opened Facebook is because I was off all social media for a year,
Mm.
because I needed a break. I needed to get away from it all because
Yep.
I was spending like 8 hours a day just scrolling and you're looking for likes and
Yep.
follows, and it's horrid. It's a
Yeah.
horrible. I really really can. I hate it now that
Hmm.
we all looking for, how many likes you got. Even my mum and dad do it.
Oh
My mum and
yeah.
dad, my mum and dad have got their little accounts on their
Bless
phones,
them.
and my dad's got. And my dad, he does his model railways. And he's like, "Oh look, I've got 20 odd views. Look." I was like, "Oh."
But it is true. I mean, I
You
think.
can edit the swearing out. I'm sorry.
I'm going to leave it all in there. I don't mind. Um, but I think, yeah, there is this danger that you fall into searching for validation, don't you?
Of course you do, and I did, and I was
Yeah.
getting so upset. I
Hmm.
was getting so upset because every day I was posting a picture,
Hmm.
a painted miniature. Um, every day I was painting a miniature and posting it on Twitter, right? And I was averaging what, between 10 and 100 likes or views, whatever, which is reasonable.
Yeah.
And then some little tosser would come along, puppy, 25,000 views. You know what I mean? And
Do you
it's
not
like,
understand the time and effort I put into this?
do you know how hard it was for me to paint these miniatures? Do you know? But I mean, that's life, though.
It is.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
It is.
understand that. I mean,
It
I
is.
I would like a baby picture of the little puppy dogs. Of course you do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain
Same.
things. But what I found really hard with any social media is the lack of work so many people do, whether or not it's about how beautiful you look or if it's sexy pictures or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, there's a huge difference between you're painting miniatures or you're doing a job that's really hard
Mm.
and you're only getting a few views or whatever, and then somebody doesn't even have to do anything and takes a picture of their boobies or whatever, and they get a million views. And it's like, I'm a crybaby, and I'm like,
But
honest to God, it's a killer.
it is
And
because it doesn't
I mean,
because
for
they're
someone who's
not.
it's my business.
Yeah, and they're
So
not, and they're not kind of equatable, are they? Because
yeah,
actually, you do this fantastic work and paint incredible miniatures, and that should really stand alone as amazing work, and then all the other stuff that goes on, that's what other people do.
yeah,
But in our heads, we're constantly kind of going, well, why isn't it
yeah,
as popular as that? And
yeah,
actually,
yeah.
they're separate things, and
Yeah. I
but
mean, it's exactly the same for you as well with your
yeah,
channels, your
yeah,
YouTube channels. I mean,
it's hard, mate. It's
it's
hard.
it's heartbreaking sometimes.
Mm.
I mean, it's a perfect example, of how messed up my channel is. I have posted some really nice videos, which I'm super proud of,
Yeah.
super proud of, and they'll get like 50 or 100 views over a couple of months, and they're complete flops. And then I got a couple of videos that have gone viral practically that are nearly 40,000 views, right? Which for me is a huge number. I
It's
know,
amazing numbers. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
know, I know for the big guns it's nothing, but for someone like me, having a video go up to like 40,000 views is a huge thing.
Mm.
But it's on the worst video I've ever bloody made. It's on the worst video, and it's I got what it was a Hero Forge. I'm gonna explain to you why it's so horrible, because I got this Hero Forge. I was sponsored by Hero Forge, which is a 3D printing company,
Yeah.
where you design your little Dungeons and Dragons miniature, and then you get it 3D printed, and then they send you the miniature. Now, what happened was I got a sponsorship through them for painting a few their miniatures. So they got in touch with me and said, "Would you like us to send you a couple of vouchers? You can have a bronze miniature, which is a solid bronze. I was like, "Ooh,
Nice.
solid
Yes,
bronze."
please.
It's about £100 for this one little miniature. So anyway, I made a little Goblin King miniature of myself for my games, and had it sent to me. And I thought, I'll make a video of this one. And anyway, the video is on my really old really old turntable, one of those battery operated turntables, had cat's hairs all stuck to it where the fur was, and then had a miniature in the middle, and you turned it on, and it was one of those rotating things to show the whole miniature, but it was a squeaky one as well. So it's kind of these cat's hairs, and and at the time, I see this here. That's my snowball microphone. That makes my voice deep and sexy. But at the time, I was using a webcam camera, so I sounded like Mickey Mouse because it was high and squeaky. So the video is this little thing of it squeaking around with my voice squeaking, and then Claire jumps into the video as well, and Claire's talking about, oh, I'm looking forward to Mike painting up one of these, and her voice is all squeaky, and she sounds like Mrs. Mouse, you know. Anyway, that's the one that's got the most popular the views, and it's horrid. It's horrid. It's embarrassing and it's horrid because that's the one that everybody's kind of known for.
And you've painted some amazing stuff. So I've seen some of the stuff you painted. And I've been lucky enough to get some of your stuff as well. Yeah. And you painted some beautiful. The dragons you did were phenomenal. Really amazing pieces of work. But it's not always kind of what we get known for, is it? Unfortunately.
It's horrid though. It's a complete embarrassment. And the thing of it is, I want to delete the video, but you can't when it's got that many views.
40,000 views, you got to keep it.
Yeah.
So, for someone that's kind of thinking about getting started with just painting for themselves, it can be a little bit daunting because
yes, it can.
Not all of us have got any artistic skill whatsoever, and I
remember you doing your stick pictures.
Yeah, I've got. I mean, so I took GCSE art many years ago, and I ended up with a N, I think, which was ungraded because it was so bad. And I'll tell you what, right? Okay, I'll say it. Sorry. Somebody within my year, a good friend of mine, he got a children's colouring book. He cut out one of the things and coloured it in and submitted it, and he ended up getting an A. So that's a true story. It actually happened. So anyway, sorry.
You didn't think of that?
It was ridiculous. It really was. It's just like you. So if someone is thinking about getting started, what's a great place to kind of start from if you're picking up your first miniature?
Well, that's a simple one for me. If you like fantasy miniatures, you like, and of course if you like your Dungeons and Dragons type games, and that would be from Reaper Miniatures, because Reaper Miniatures do an absolutely fantastic starter box, which contains all your prime colours and paints, and it even comes with some miniatures to paint. So it comes with your brushes, paints. It's a complete set. Now, of course, I'm saying that because I love that type of fantasy engineer, where which is Dungeons and Dragons orientated more, an RPG. But if you like your 40k and all that type of stuff, you have to go to Games Workshop and pay a little bit more, and they do paint sets. But I'd still recommend going for the Reaper because it's cheaper, and you get more colours and you do get a few miniatures. But nowadays, again, we're in the UK. The thing with the UK is you've only got two real main companies in the UK. That's Mantic Games and Games Workshop. Reaper Miniatures is a USA-based company, which still is not huge over here. And that's another reason why my channel, that's another reason why my YouTube channel is kind of it's doing really well. I'm nearly at 4,000 subscribers, and I mean I'm very happy with that.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is, because I'm doing companies like Reaper Miniatures, they're not super well known.
Yeah.
So my videos aren't as popular as the Games Workshop videos because it's people in the UK don't know about it.
Yeah.
They're not. It's a completely different type of thing. It's getting more popular. But I also think that it's actually starting to go on the decline as well because 3D printing is taking over a lot of things.
Yes,
I'm
definitely.
loving the 3D printing myself at the moment. I've been doing it a lot the last few days, printing off Star Wars miniatures. But what's happening, I think, is the Kickstarters initially were fantastic, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, I spent £100, we get 100 miniatures."
Yep.
And I've backed the Reaper Miniatures Kickstarter. We're on Kickstarter 6 now. That's 6 Kickstarters. Thousands of miniatures. Yeah, you're averaging 100 to 200 miniatures per Kickstarter. And of course, it gets to a stage where it doesn't matter how old you are, you'll never paint these in your
No,
lifetime.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I've
absolutely.
got boxes and boxes and boxes around my room just in front of me now, and I know I'll never paint them. So the thing with it is that initial, oh wow, look at that Kickstarter and all the miniatures you get. Now it's getting very hard for the companies to find more stuff,
Mm.
um, because everything's been done. And again, going back to Dungeons and Dragons, you got your monster manual. Most of those monsters are done now.
Yeah, they're out there, aren't they?
So,
Mm.
I mean, you can get the eye of the beholder, you can get all anything you want. So it's getting to a stage where these different companies are checking out different dragons and stuff. It's actually starting to get boring. It's actually starting to get boring because
Mm.
there is so many dragons, there's so many barbarians, there's so many wizards. There's millions now
Yep.
in 3D printing in all the different games, and it's got to a stage now where people are lost or starting to get lost. Do we go for Games Workshop? Do we do D&D? Do we do RPGs? Because the miniature market, everybody's jumped on it, especially with the
Mm.
3D printing.
Yep.
And there's just a million dragons out there, by all the different companies. And I think what's happened, it'll get to a stage where, like myself, I'm not buying anymore.
Mm.
I haven't bought a miniature from Reaper Miniatures since last year.
Oh wow.
And I used to buy £100 a month of miniatures from Reaper nearly every month.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't bought anything since last year, and that's it. I'm no miniatures because I'm trying to use up everything I've got. It's like
Yeah,
all
of
my
course.
paint.
Yeah.
I got thousands of paints now, so I'm trying to use up all those paints. It's pointless buying more.
Mm.
And of course I'm on a budget now. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
my money's gone down quite a lot after COVID, and of course I haven't been well,
Mm.
uh,
Yeah.
so I've had to cut back on what I've been doing. So I've also had to cut back on my spending on my
Yeah.
miniatures. But other than that, everything's brilliant. But I do think the miniature market
Mm.
is got to level out somewhere because
Yes.
at the minute everybody's in the game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah. I
don't
mean,
know what will happen there.
you've only got to look go online and see how many files you can download
Yeah, of course,
for some really, and I guess because people are designing them and not having to print them, they can
yeah.
spend more time creating really interesting and you
Of
know,
some of these 3D prints, they're better than the companies.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree.
I printed off this the other day. This is a little, I don't know if you had a close up. You recognise
Ooh,
that?
that's amazing. Yes,
Yeah, yes, that's the
love
bantha
that.
from Star Wars. That's from a guy called Black Remnant, and
That's very cool.
he does all these miniatures. He calls them different names on his
Mm, of
Patreon because
course.
he can't actually use the real names for the actual
Yeah,
miniatures. But of course,
because
he calls.
they're stuff he's designed.
Yeah,
They're just
exactly.
loosely based on other
Yes,
things.
but they're absolutely gorgeous, absolutely
Mm, no, it's
gorgeous,
great.
and I'm loving it. And of course, that is practically that. I think that's about $5 6, which works out about £5. You will not get that from a company.
No, you won't.
I mean, the average cost of a Star Wars Legion miniature is about £20 for one miniature.
Mm,
So these guys that are doing these Patreons, that you sub to and you pay them like £10 a month and you get a big pile of 3D prints. I mean, it works out fantastic. And this is what is also a huge problem in my eyes for companies like Reaper Miniatures, Mantic Games. I've noticed Mantic Games, they're also doing 3D prints now.
mm,
So everybody's trying. I mean, I think even Reaper Miniatures are talking about doing 3D prints. No, I think is a fantastic idea, But of course, not everybody wants to buy a 3D print from a company. We want to do it in the house on our little printers here, but we don't want to buy 3D prints from an actual company that makes a lot of money.
Yeah.
Um, I want
Is there
I want my quality plastic for that.
I was going to say, is there a big difference in terms of the quality of? I mean,
Resin,
obviously, what you can do at home
yeah.
compared to a big
Well,
company, there's
let's
going to
put it
be.
this way: 3D printing now compared to what it was is absolutely amazing.
Mm,
But you use resin and you get really, really beautiful prints. But resin is very brittle.
yeah,
So what will happen, it's like I got some more of these little Tuscan Raiders here. See how thin their gun is there? I mean, it's fantastic. But what will happen is that'll snap very, very easily.
yeah,
Where when you buy from a company like Games Workshop or Reaper Miniatures, you'll have that very, very strong plastic that will have more bend in it and it won't
mm,
snap. Um, but the 3D printing is fantastic, but it really is for people like myself. I mean, I can paint up some of these and sell them on eBay,
yeah.
and people will be very happy. But they wouldn't expect one of these miniatures if you're buying it from Reaper Miniatures.
No, of course not.
Not in my. That's how I. That's my opinion anyway. Um,
Is there a
um,
is there a
I've been doing it
difference?
too long to, you know.
Is there a difference between when you come to kind of paint and prepare a 3D print against something, say, Reaper's produced? It, do you go about that in a different way in terms of what you have to do to get the best out of painting that model or that miniature?
It's all miniatures are roughly the same. The resin is a lot more work because you have to wash your miniatures using that alcohol liquid. So you've got to take all the spare resin off and give them a good clean. But once they are dry, it's exactly the same as all the other miniatures. You're just using a white undercoat or a black undercoat. So it's really no different, to be honest. Um, and like I say, 3D printing has become super super cool, and the prints you get look nicer than a lot of the companies their actual miniatures that are on the shelves.
Yeah,
And that is the beauty of the 3D printing with resin is you can actually get a better miniature than what you can buy, and to me that's a bit embarrassing when the companies aren't doing
no,
when you can
absolutely.
actually when you can actually print a better looking miniature than what a company will do.
Yeah,
I mean, let's put it this way: Games Workshop will always be fantastic. And the reason, and that's why you're paying a premium for Games
yeah,
Workshop.
absolutely. Yeah,
You're paying more for Games Workshop, even though we're all screaming, "Oh, Games Workshop is too expensive! It's too expensive!" But the quality of the miniature is amazing. Reaper Miniatures, um, they started off with your very bendy, cheap plastic miniatures, and of course now over the years they've got more better and better plastic. So what happened with Reaper Miniatures was you've lost that cheap. You, well, a lot of people started with Reaper Miniatures because they were cheap miniatures to buy in bulk, and now you can't do that now because the miniatures are more expensive. So that's
yeah,
another thing where Reaper Miniatures have changed, and the same with Mantic Games. All these companies they were trying to compete with Games Workshop,
mm,
and what's happened is they've slowly produced better and better plastic, and now their prices are creeping up closer and closer to Games Workshop prices. And this is another reason why I can't afford to buy the Reaper Miniatures
yeah.
because I was buying them when they were a hell of a lot cheaper.
It's an expensive
And
hobby, isn't it? It's
it's
not
a
cheap.
super, super expensive
Yeah,
hobby. I was very, very lucky starting my business when I did because what happened was um, the people were buying my miniatures and they were paying for my hobby.
mm, yeah,
When 3 or 4 people buy a few miniatures off me, that pays for my paints, pays for my brushes, and it pays for the actual miniature.
mm,
So the only thing that I'm really putting into it is my time.
yeah.
So you put in, and I mean, what I was like when I was first doing it. I was like 16-hour days practically.
How long? So for say like we'll say a stab miniature. How long does? Because you always talk about the fact that your painting style is tabletop quality, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm also a
It's
speed painter as well.
mm,
The average person paints a miniature in a day.
mm,
I average about 8 miniatures in a day on a good day.
wow.
So
That's
So
incredible.
yeah. But the thing of it is, I am only doing tabletop quality. I mean, some of the, I mean, if you have a professional pro painter, they can spend like 6 months on one miniature.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing, they're entering these competitions like Golden Demon Awards,
Mm,
and they're entering all these. That's what they live for.
mm,
That's what they live for. They live for painting to win these competitions, and the quality of the work is lifelike.
mm.
They are so good. The skin tones are perfect. The hair's perfect. All the clothes are perfect. If they're doing animals, they're all absolutely. They look like a photograph.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, my miniatures are for playing and chucking across the table. But I do them to I what it is. I'm very happy with my quality
Mm,
because the way I see it, I've got an old school style that goes with my Dungeons, and again with my Star Wars miniatures, I paint them to a quality that I like.
mm.
I don't feel like I need to prove to anyone because I've won competitions myself. I've won competitions from Antic Games, and I've got trophies in my cabinet, and it's something I've done in the past,
Mm,
but I don't like that competition.
mm.
That's another thing I hate, and that's another reason why my channel is about painting to a tabletop standard. It's for people who love gaming, but
Yes.
also who are also not in competition with 10,000 people trying to paint the best miniature,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
that's where it all goes wrong on Twitter and all social media, because everybody's trying to be the best of the best of the best of the best,
Hmm.
and there's always a better painter. It doesn't matter if you are the best, there's someone better than you.
There will always be, no matter what industry you're in, you'll always find there is somebody who can do things better. But
Oh,
like you said, it's more about the enjoyment of it
it's
and people
about
having
enjoying the hobby.
yeah.
It's about painting and enjoying the painting. But for me, it's about having all my miniatures painted up to a standard that I think looks cool and really good when I play a game.
Yep.
And it's having that feeling of I painted all those. This is what I've done. It's fantastic. But I've it's got to a stage where I don't want to be like anybody else. I want to just be a normal person painting these miniatures and having a great time playing my games.
Hmm.
I don't care if there's better painters out there now. I used to. I used to get quite upset about it, but you suddenly realise it's not worth it. It's not worth
You
it,
don't you don't you
and
don't you don't
things have
gain
been better.
anything, do
No,
you?
you don't gain anything because it's again it's all stress, and that's what the doctor told me. Keep away from the anxiety. So that's just anxiety. It's stress. And I mean, you know yourself how things
Yeah, yeah.
get wrapped up.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Mm.
I do think there is definitely a thing of it's okay to do things you love and enjoy it, and for that to be the goal
Mm.
rather than it to be
Yeah,
I need it to be
yeah,
explosive and like the greatest thing anyone's ever seen. I mean, that's
yeah,
great, fantastic. Why
yeah,
not? But sometimes the enjoyment comes from
yeah.
the piece of work you've created for yourself.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, I get a lot of joy from making my own little bases, my own little models.
Yes,
It's like I'm talking about making a little throne room for Jabba the Hutt. I mean, I'll get tons of fun.
I'm really excited for that. I think that's going to look amazing. I can't
So
wait
I'm
for
going to
that.
make a little with all the old characters in it. But of
Yeah.
course, again, Star Wars ended for me at Return of the Jedi, of course. I mean, the prequels aren't too bad. The prequels aren't too bad. The Phantom Menace was the biggest letdown of my life, but it wasn't too bad. I think I cried leaving the cinema for that.
No. What do you think's the biggest mistake people make when they first come to painting? What tends to be the
They try too
biggest
hard.
error? Hmm.
They try too hard. Biggest error is they add eyes. They add eyes to miniatures, and the reason why I say that is because I didn't add eyes for many years because um, you can actually paint a really nice looking miniature on your first day. I mean, for example, the little Chewbacca there, you could paint that Chewbacca brown, and then you could just maybe add a couple of colors, a little red and a little bit of green going around for his little jacket there. And that's enough. That's your first miniature done. But what happens is people will get adventurous because they've watched YouTube videos and they've watched all these pro painters doing all this magnificent stuff. So they'll be like, "Oh, right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just a bit of white there, and a little white there, and then I'll put some peoples in it, and then you got this boss-eyed, you got this boss-eyed Chewbacca with these great big bobble eyes." Uh, and all I suggest is just add an ink wash. Just add an ink wash over the whole miniature, and stuff like that. You just do a very basic paint. Just paint the basic colours in your miniature first. So if it's got your blues, they call it. It's a very simple way of. It's called blocking in the colours. So you'd have your miniature, and say you got this Yeti here. You'd paint the Yeti white because it's a white fur, and his little stick maybe brown, and so you'd maybe some bone effects on his little necklace there. I mean, that's just a simple little Yeti miniature, and that's all I'd do. Because there's no point doing something super advanced on your miniatures because you're not ready. Everything takes time. There's so many people out there, and this is another problem with YouTube is even though people are saying, "Oh, beginner friendly," sometimes it's not beginner friendly because they're still trying to put those eyes in. And I found just by adding an ink wash and adding an ink wash over your miniature, that gives a shade in the eye sockets. So, and of course, when you're a tabletop gamer like we are, you play at this distance. You're playing at this distance. So you don't need to paint the eyes on a tabletop miniature. I paint the eyes on all of my tabletop miniatures because that's what I do. But what I'm trying to say is if you're a beginner, you don't need to. You can actually get away with it because your miniatures is that far ahead in front of you. You're playing at an arm's distance.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see the real fine details. But that's what most of the beginners make their mistake. They try to paint this. Oh, and another thing, quickly before I is swords. Don't splat blood everywhere. It's stupid. One of the you used to do it. You can tell. The worst thing you can do with any miniature, if it's got a sword, and I did it. I did it back in the 80s. Is I'd cover the sword in blobs of bright red blood. Now, of course, blood is never bright red anyway. It's always a dark browny color. But what will happen is it just looks awful on your swords. So yeah, it's actually better to leave the sword to silver, and don't blob any bits of blood on it. So yeah, they're my two top tips for beginners. Don't paint the eyes, and don't
do blood.
Don't do blood.
They're great tips. No, absolutely. But I think you're right. I think it's if you are a beginner, it's about taking it slow and steady, and don't overcomplicate.
Everything takes time.
Yeah.
Everything takes a long, long time. I mean, you watch some of my very first YouTube videos. Oh my goodness! I'm like, now we're going to, and they're cringeworthy. Honest to God, the lack of confidence I had in my first couple of years really doing YouTube videos. Oh my God! And of course, I tried Twitch. Remember?
Yep.
And
I loved your Twitch videos. They were great.
Everybody loved the Twitch because they used to take the piss, and that.
Okay, that was part of it. I did enjoy that bit as well. Yeah, I was not going to lie.
I like doing the Twitch streams, but it wasn't my thing, and that was it was again anxiety. Because I suffer with anxiety, Twitch doing a live stream is very, very, very scary. It's like today. I know this is a recorded one. So it's not so bad for me because I know you can, I don't have to worry about things. But when you're doing something live, of course, you got that extra anxiety of maybe people watching and asking strange questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was very, very lucky with my Twitch channel. that I never had any nasty people come onto this
No,
stream.
no,
I
it was.
watched a lot of Twitch channels where people have actually gone on and been real nasty to the
Mhm.
person painting or doing whatever, and that's wrong.
Yeah,
That's just nasty.
definitely, 100%, absolutely.
Mm.
What do you think's been your greatest achievement? Would you say from a painting perspective? What's the model that maybe sticks out in your head and you go, do you know what? This was my crowning glory, if you like.
Well, I actually, I'd say I did the Reaper Miniatures Crypt,
Yes.
which was it was a crypt made by Reaper Miniatures for one of their Kickstarters, and what I did, I made a complete. Well, I made all
It's like a
the
diorama, wasn't it? It was
yeah, the
yeah.
diorama. I made everything for well, it's all completely made out of hair drying clay, and that was one of my absolutely favorite pieces. Um, but there's been quite a few actually. I mean, I did a crystal golem for Mantic Games,
Ooh, yes.
and I took a long time making that one, and that won me the competition from Mantic Games. Um, and I got a nice trophy in my cabinet for that. It's always nice to have at least one trophy,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, absolutely.
I've seen some companies they give trophies out willy nilly,
Hmm.
you know. It seems to be in the USA they do that. Um,
I've got a trophy cabinet full of wooden spoons for participation. That's my that's the extent of my abilities.
but the thing of it is though is not to get addicted to trophy hunting as I
Yeah,
call it, because that's another thing that I kind of started doing, and then I realized this that's too stressful as well.
yeah.
So again, I got out of doing the old competitions, but I did get a couple of trophies, which I was really happy about.
Mm.
But I didn't want to go down there because it gets too again competition.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not worth it. If you're a nice human being like you are, you're not that type of person who wants to
Oh, me.
battle.
Sorry.
Yeah, you don't want you don't want to fight over things. You don't want to feel like you're better than someone else.
No, no.
And this is again going back to my miniatures. I want to be equal to everybody else doing miniature painting.
Mm.
I want people to watch my channel and think, "Oh my God, I can do that.
Yeah.
That guy's painting to a standard that I can do. Oh, is that how he did that? Oh, wow, that Goblin King's great. We'll copy him because I know I can do that." The only trouble with what I've done over the years, though, is because I've made it so everybody can do what I'm doing.
Mm.
A lot of people have done it and ripped me off. It's like, thanks for that. Thanks.
You've made it so accessible. You've replaced yourself.
Yes. Yeah, and I had quite a few
Oh,
people start their own channels and everything else, and totally ripped me off. Not
oh
as a
no,
person,
no,
but
no.
just
But
but it gave them the confidence.
yes,
Then
yeah,
it
yeah,
gave them the confidence to start their own channels, which is fantastic.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
also, it's like, well, okay, I don't know.
It's now, yeah. I know what you
Uh,
mean. You're a victim of your own success. It's awful.
sometimes, yes.
I mean, what I would say is, it's definitely worth going to check out the YouTube channel because there's some amazing videos on there, some real proper useful instructions if you are looking to get started. And by useful, I mean good, solid, practical advice and demonstrations, which, you know, is the
Who are you
best thing
talking
you
about?
could do. I'm talking about you, you donut.
Who?
Yeah. But seriously, you know, it is about if you want to get started. I don't think anyone would give you a better grounding than the videos you can get over on your YouTube channel.
Thank you so much.
You're very
Um,
welcome.
but let me just say one thing though, and that is there are many people like me doing the YouTube channels. Um, so I think finding a channel like I'm doing where it is down to earth
Hmm.
and is a blessing. All these big, huge channels with their little ticks, I mean, they're good channels, but they got all the funding,
Yeah.
they got all the big mod cons, they got all the,
The
and they're
equipment,
getting millions of views, and that's brilliant. Well done to them. But the trouble is, the average Joe blogs like you and me, we can't afford to do that.
no.
We will never ever be able to afford to do that, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing. But I'm
Absolutely.
also happy doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I personally believe if my channel suddenly became super famous, I wouldn't be able to cope with it
Mm.
because of my anxiety. I think there's somebody looking down on me saying, "Look, you're at your point now. I'm looking after you. I mean, you got your supporters. You're making a little bit of money, and it's just enough that your anxiety is holding off,
Mm.
and you're able to do these little shows and you're able to do these little things." But I also believe that if I did get really famous, I wouldn't be able to cope with it
Mm.
because of my anxiety.
Yeah.
So there's that to think about. And I truly believe that if something did happen, I would be in a lot of trouble if
Mm.
I had like 100,000 subscribers and stuff. I probably I wouldn't be able to cope with it probably.
There's definitely something about fame and success being a challenge,
Mm.
and actually, it's how you measure success. Can't even say the word. It's how you measure success, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
that's it.
what's success for you. Well, success is doing the thing you love,
Mm.
being able to, produce fantastic work, inspiring other people.
Mm.
Do you really need much more than that?
Yeah.
And that feels like a perfect place for us to end our little chat.
Has it been an hour already?
It has. Do you know what? We're literally about 4 minutes out. It's great. Do make sure that you do pop across. So Mikey's got a Ko-fi, which you can pop across and support, and you can see some more of the amazing work that he does, plus the YouTube videos. And I would absolutely recommend you go and subscribe and
I'll
follow.
leave
And
I'll leave links
yeah, I'll
below
pop
this.
them in the yeah, we'll pop them in the
I'll,
video
I'll,
below.
leave, I'll leave links as well below this video once
Yeah,
you post it and I've watched it and gone, oh
absolutely.
dear.
But seriously, I don't think you'll find someone who's more generous with their time in terms of teaching people, how to get started. And if that's what you're looking for, I suggest that is where you pop off to now. But that's it for today, folks. Mikey, thank you so much for popping on and chatting to me today. It's
My
always
pleasure,
greatly
my pleasure.
appreciated.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, mate. And don't forget, you can check me out across the social media under the Gamers Rest. You can see some of the other videos I've got on YouTube where you can catch me playing games badly, which I do on a regular basis. And of course, do come back again where I'll be talking to more people in the TTRPG industry. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.